All right, so the sheets I just passed out is this. These are storyboard slash planning sheets for how we're going to be doing our animation stuff. So before we get into any like real animation stuff, we have to know like what are we going to do, okay? So getting into our first project, we have to start planning for it, okay? Our first project is going to be a title card. So if you look at any of the title screen, like title animation pack, modern titles, this one here, that one there, insert coin. So all of these are different title screens that people have used for their stuff, for their animations. So what we want to do is basically we want to design a title screen for all of our projects. So every project that we turn in, at the start of it, it'll say your name and then the project name, and it'll animate obviously into screen and then coming off the screen. That way anyone will know looking at it, this is what I'm supposed to be looking at here, okay? So those sheets that you have, you're going to sketch out different layouts for different titles that you want to have. So don't do this yet. I'm just going to show you some examples. It's not there. So many folders. D drive. Pull this over here so I can do it. Title card. All right, so here is an example of a title card. Okay, so you'll notice the screen starts, in this case he used a gray background to start all of his. That's customizable inside of After Effects. You can start with whatever color you want as your background. And then he has his name, he has the class, and then he has title card. You don't need to put the class in this one unless you want to have the class in this one. Okay, so what we're going to be designing is not the full animation. What we're going to be designing is this. What does this screen look like, okay? Whenever we do an animation, don't think of it like we're going to go into animation and design something. Think of it backwards. We're going to take a design and then figure out how to animate that design into the screen, okay? So there's one example. There's another one. So there's the design of it, right? So that's what the viewer that is getting out of it. That's the information that they need. There it is. There again. There it is again. Okay, so every one of these, there's a different design obviously to them. None of these are the same, and they shouldn't be the same. So what you're going to have on yours is a number, so what assignment number it is, so 01, 02, 03, whatever it is. You'll have the name of the assignment, and then you'll have your name somewhere on the sheet. And if you wanted to add the class number, you definitely could add that if it balanced your design out, okay? So for next week, we're going to get into After Effects, but so we can start that thought process. Sorry, not next week. For Wednesday, when you come in, I want to see all of these filled out with different designs that you have in mind for your animation, okay? Okay, not for the animation, but for the logo. Don't think of it like random things. Think of it just like you would in a design project, in a design class. How are the things going to be laid out? What is the best way for me to organize my information so that it balances correctly with everything else we see? This one, everything is very centered right in the middle. The color selection's nice, all that. You don't have to worry about color selection at this point. You have to worry about fonts at this point. The main thing is, where are things going to be laid out? How big are things going to be? If I'm looking at that and I'm going to draw it, let me just go to a new document so we can see it. Actually, I just draw it right there in the middle. I would just draw, let's say, the shape there for where the number is going to be, and then this is going to be another piece of information. And then she has a title under there. There. That's as complex as your drawings have to be. Just boxes of where the information is going to be laid out. Once you have that, then it's like, okay, well, what can I do to spice it up a little bit to make it look a little bit fancier? And then that's where she has like this little line and that line there. She has the boxes around the things. She has the different colors. All of those things working together. Same thing on this one. Looking at, there's a piece of text here. There's a piece of text there. Same thing on this one. Piece of text, piece of text, piece of text, piece of text, and obviously the piece of text right in the middle. And then the same thing here. Now to help you along with that, it should be up on Canvas. On your Canvas, what happened to it? It was there. All right, I'll find out what happened to it because it was there a minute or earlier. There's a principal elements of design. Maybe it was that one. Yeah, this is a good one to jump right into. This was the one. Okay. So read through this thing. I'll put the link on Canvas so that you have it. Your animations can be wonderful animations, but if there's no design to the animations, there's no point. No one's going to want to look at it. So the first thing we have to do is understand how to do just some basic design things, if we've forgotten them, and then be able to apply those things in there. Some things that people typically don't do is stuff like line weight. Looking at this one, notice how there's two different line weights here, right? There's that line weight and this line weight. And these two go together, and then this one is kind of like balancing with the other ones. The scale of things is different, right? The scale of this versus the scale of that. The colors. This one doesn't really have repetition. Negative space is good. You know, there's a lot of negative space out there. Symmetry, there's no symmetry, there's no transparency, there's no texture to this. The balance is good. It feels like the whole thing is well balanced, well put together. It's pretty apparent here too. This could have been probably moved over a hair or a half a hair, like right there. If that title card was right there, it would feel a little bit more balanced. If these were a little bit closer in, if everything was a little bit tighter, that could make it feel a little bit more balanced. Hierarchy obviously is also important. Notice how 0-1 title card is the biggest thing here. 0-1 title card is the biggest thing there. So just there. 0-1 title opener, same thing, is the biggest thing here, right? Having a hierarchy, contrast, the pink with the white, the black with the white, good contrast. Framing, so she's framed each one of those things, and the title card is actually like framed there. Grid, so it's laid out nicely. There's no randomness really to this one. The direction flows, okay? So read through this to help you understand how to get some good design stuff. You're not going to get there the first time if you haven't touched design or haven't thought about design anytime recently. But if you read through this, this will at least get you started in the right direction. The better off you are at understanding how to lay things out on the screen, the better off you're going to understand how to animate them so they look pleasant, okay? So I'm just going to copy that and throw it in there and then wonder why that wasn't even listed. I'll put that under title card. Oops. There we go. And then we'll publish that. Cool. Okay. So when you come in on Wednesday, we'll go over the next step, which is taking these cards and then starting to apply it into this form. Okay. All of these things will be turned in part of your grade for the project. So you can't do one without the other. And if you're not aware of this, you can't work backwards either. You can't animate something and then go back and try to draw up 20 random sketches and then just satisfy me. That's not how it works. You sketch things out, you go through this phase of picking colors and fonts and laying things out better, and then you get into the animation phase. That's how the industry works. In the real world, you start on something like this, you get that approved, they tweak it, whatever. Then you go into something like this, you get that approved, and then you get into After Effects and start doing that, okay? So even though today we're gonna get into After Effects and start playing around, typically we need to do these steps first, okay? Any questions on that? No. When's it gonna be ready? Wednesday, before you come in, not during class, right? So Wednesday you come in, we'll take these, we'll put it into this, and then we'll start actually working on building our title cards, okay? Cool. Still have that open, that's fine. All right, so in After Effects, I want you to go to File, Open, and I want you to find your playing file. Okay, don't open your template one. The template stays as template. We never actually open up the template file. We always just save that off and then open up the playing one or whichever one we're working on. Cool. Questions yet? No? Good. All right. So this is just a quick animation. This is what we're going to create. Okay, it's very simple. There's a lot of stuff packed into this that make it work. And these concepts that we're doing even here, you will still use. Literally the last animation you do for this class, you'll be doing the exact same things, okay? So don't think that, oh, this is silly, why are we doing something like this? I just want to jump in. No. We're going to go crazy with this. So I'm just going to delete this. It'll be something like this. It's not going to be exact, but it'll be something. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is make a composition that we can actually work on. So where's the obvious spot to make a composition? New composition right in the middle, right? That's one spot. You can also go up to Composition New. You can also click down here under Composition. So click one of those buttons. You can also hit Control N, and Control N will also make a new composition. What size do you think we're going to be working at? Yes. On your cheat sheets, notice the bottom area, it says 960 by 540. You may have to unclick your lock aspect ratio so that you can type those numbers in. Don't hit enter on it yet, just go through 960, 540. I want to talk about what these things mean. Okay, what's our frame rate? 30. So go to your frame rate and type in 30. What does frame rate mean? Frames per second, right? So video, animation, all that stuff, it's just pictures. In this case, it's 30 pictures per second. If you were working on something in England, in the UK, over there, their stuff is 25 frames per second. Some of the videos that we may work with will be 25 frames per second. Just a matter of their stuff, how they do it. Even here, you'll find places using 24 or 15 or whatever it is. 30 is just a nice round number that we use for the class. It's easy to divide, it's easy to utilize. 960 by 540. What does that reference or connect to? Not the aspect ratio. Our document size, okay? So your TV's at home, 1920 by 1080 or 1080p, right? Something like that. These are all just the how many pixels this way and how many pixels that way this is. If something is 1080p, that means it's 1920 pixels wide by 1080 or 1080 pixels tall. And the P just means progressive, meaning that every single one of those images is a full image. The other one is interlaced, where it's actually like two different images and stacked on top of each other. Here we're using 960 by 540. The smaller the size of what we're working on, the faster it's going to go. So we could work at 1920 by 1080, but it'll run 4 times slower, okay? So if you're in the industry, whatever they need, you do it at that resolution, it's gonna go slower. Here, we're doing it at this because we're learning, because this is a class, and because we kind of have limited time for these projects, okay? So 960 by 540. There's also square pixels. That may sound weird, like why wouldn't you have square pixels? In some theaters, I don't think they're doing this anymore now as far as, and nothing I worked on is like that. But basically they would take a video and they would like squish it and they would put it onto a 35 millimeter film. And then when you go to the theater, it would like stretch it out. Okay, so sometimes you work in these like stretch pixels or squish pixels, then it stretches it out. We don't need to worry about any of that here. Everything we're doing is square pixels, okay? Full resolution. This references that full resolution that's down here, okay? So if we wanted to automatically set it to like half or quarter, we could do that. Anything in here we can change at any point. That's a silly thing to even have there, I guess, but for whatever reason they keep it. So you can leave it at full. Our start time code is 0 seconds. Typically always we'll start at 0 because it's the easiest thing to do. And then our duration. This is going to confuse typically 2 or 3 people in the class. Every class I have usually confuses 2 or 3 people. So if we're working at 30 frames per second, how many frames are in a second? That's not a trick question. 30, right? Okay. So that means that if we had 5 seconds, how many frames should we have? Someone say it louder and correct. 150, thank you. 3 times 5 is 15, and then add to 0, 350. Work on your math, okay? Do multiplication. So, the way that this is set up here, we have frames, seconds, minutes, and hours. Nothing in here will be hours or minutes typically. Typically we're going to work in seconds for all of our animations, okay? So if you wanted to make something 5 seconds long, you don't have to go through and erase all of those and just type in the 5 in the 5 spot. You can just type in 5 seconds and 00 frames, okay? So highlight that whole area down there and type in 500. Now what would happen if I just typed in 5? 5 frames, right. And so that's what happens typically that people forget. They type in 5, they go to start animating stuff and they think they're animating, this is 1 second, this is 2 seconds, this is 3, but it's frames. And obviously 5 frames is going to move a lot faster than 5 seconds is going to move, okay? Cool. So we have background color. Remember I said that one student picked gray for his background. You can choose a different color here if you want. We're fine with black for now. Typically when I work, I make a separate layer and I just make that a color and that's my background, unless I have transparency. One more thing I'm going to point out, which is, I meant to mention this earlier, 960 by 540 does, Dennis said, there's a specific aspect ratio to it. How wide versus how tall something is important. The TVs you have at home, are typically, unless you have a different TV, are typically in a widescreen format, so they're 16 by 9 is typically what that aspect ratio is. We got rid of those screens. Older TVs, like the tube TVs, they were 4 by 3, so they were a lot boxier looking. They're coming up with other ones now that are even wider and shorter just because of how they want to work their stuff out. So as long as we have the pixels correct, we're square pixels, we're going to be at that resolution, okay? So just something to be aware of, that this is a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. Let's give it a name at the top. So just call it playing 001. And then you can hit enter. Okay, so every single time you make a composition, it's always going to be 960 by 540, unless we have a special project that doesn't use 960 by 540, but everything for this class will be. We also will have 30 frames per second, and then we will also have typically around 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever it is. If at any point we need to change any of those settings, you can go to composition, composition settings, it pops up that whole window again, and you can fix what you need to fix. So if you typed in 5 frames, you can go type 5 seconds and get that back, okay? So we just made a composition. What's the first thing we should do? Not yet. We could, but. Yep, composition goes in the composition folder, and then we stay organized. And then we can save. Okay. So now we have our composition in the composition folder. We've created our composition down here so we can actually start building something. So let's build a shape. So everything that we're going to be creating can be created under layer new. But notice how I have to be in a certain area. So if I'm here and I click layer, nothing shows up, okay? There's no options for layer when I'm clicked on this. When I'm clicked on my composition, then I can go to layer new and make a solid. Let's just give this a name, so we'll call it box at the very top. And we'll make the box 100 pixels by 100 pixels. And then you can pick whatever your favorite color is. I'll pick pink, and then hit OK. You can change the color later, so if you decide I don't like that color anymore, you can come back and do it. Yes, ma'am. Under layer new, then go to solid. And then make it 100 by 100 and call it box. And then you can hit OK so that you can actually see your box that gets created. Okay. Anyone notice the hotkey that was for creating a new solid? Control Y, okay? That's on your hotkey sheet. That is something you will do a lot. Again, especially if you don't want to always jump up to those menus and change those things, it's important to make note of these things. Does anyone happen to see what change solid settings was? Control Shift Y. I didn't expect you to. I was just wondering if anyone did. Okay, so if we need to change the color or the size or anything of it, we would hit Control Shift Y and it would jump us right into it. Okay. Cool. All right, so we want to animate this. So we have down here a blue ticker. This tells us what time we are at. The way that animation works is you do this thing called keyframes. You say, at this time I want this here, at this time I want it here, okay? So we want this box to be where at the start of this animation? Right. Where left? Off the screen, right? So drag your box off the screen. Make sure it goes straight off the screen. And you know how to constrain something so it moves straight. Shift, yep. Lots of Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign hotkeys will transfer, except for the one that matters the most, which is the pen tool. That one is a completely different hotkey. It's G for pen instead of P for pen. That makes sense, right? Cool. So it's off the screen. Now we have to tell After Effects, I want to set a keyframe for this. So let's play with some of those features. This is our layer, okay? All of the stuff for that layer is accessible, that's the word, with this little arrow right here. So click that little arrow next to box, and you should see a drop down. And the drop down says what? Transform, good. And then if we open that arrow, it has a whole bunch of other stuff listed. These are the basic transform properties that every single item that we create inside of After Effects will have. Position, anchor point, opacity, rotation, and scale. There's other ones that different items will have. These numbers here are the values for each one of those things. All of these, with the exception of opacity, can be whatever number you want them to be. So transform can be 7 trillion if you want it to be. You wouldn't see it, but it could be, okay? Opacity only goes from 0 to 100. Everything else can be whatever. Anything that's in blue in After Effects, you can click and drag right on it and adjust the property. So if I wanted to move that box from the center of my screen and move it to the left, I could have went to position, because that's what I'm adjusting, and adjusted one of those numbers there to slide it straight off the screen, okay? Some of these will have 2 numbers. Anchor point has 2 numbers, position has 2 numbers, scale has 2, rotation has 2. Rotations is the only one that's kind of weird. This first number is how many times it spins around. So if I put in 360 there, that would mean spin around 360 times, okay? The other one is how many degrees. So if I wanted to spin 10 times, or half of a time around, I could type in 180 or whatever, okay? So just be aware of those 2. Now, what do you think the 2 numbers are? Like, how do I have 2 numbers for position? X and Y. Which way does X go? Left and right, and then Y goes up and down, right? So we moved it to the left, so I could click and drag right on that left number. Typically, when you animate something, don't leave anything to chance. Be a bit OCD about it and say, I want this item to move straight. Instead of just clicking and dragging, moving it over, maybe I'm going to hold down Shift and drag it over, or maybe I'll just come down here and adjust it there, okay? So just be aware of those things. Same thing with scale. The link is on, right? So we can't accidentally distort it. But if I go out here and I start grabbing on the corner, you can see how I can distort it. So you want to be aware of that you don't accidentally distort anything that you draw. All right? So enough of that. Let's get into the animation. The stopwatch, that tells After Effects I want to animate this property. So our ticker, that's what that's called, is right at the very start. It's at 0. I want to tell it that that's where I want the position to be. So what am I going to do? Click the stopwatch. Okay? So just click on that stopwatch. On the older computers, you guys probably don't remember this, but older computers had bigger resolutions. So that stopwatch actually looked like a good-sized stopwatch. But now the screens are so small you can barely see it. Once this is clicked, it's locked in, okay? You're setting keyframes on that item. You never have to touch it again unless you want to get rid of keyframes. So just so you can see it, click the stopwatch again and see what happens. What happened to your keyframe? It went away, right? So same thing. If we had a whole layer of keyframes, we click that stopwatch, it all goes away. So we only click it once to say this is going to be animated, and then anything we do to it is then animated, okay? So click it back on so you have it. A couple things popped up when we started animating this. Did anyone notice what those things were? Yep, left of the stopwatch we got this. There's a little diamond on the left of it. And then what about on the right side of it? There's a diamond there. So diamonds are your keyframes, okay? Anything you typically see in this area, those are going to be keyframes, whether they're diamonds or circles or some other kind of shape. Okay, so at frame 0, which is where we're currently at time 0, we've told it to be off screen. When do we want this to hit that wall? At the end, but at 5? Is that what we're saying? What was that? Sure. So let's go to 5. Okay, so you just click and drag all the way to the right. Make sure when you drag, you're dragging that ticker. You can take your layer and slide it over. You don't want to do that. You want to grab the ticker and just slide the ticker over. Okay, so now how do we tell it to get to the other side? We just move it. And again, you can use a couple different things. You could just grab it and drag it and hold shift. Or you can use the X thing there and just slide it over. If you need to zoom in, scroll wheel zooms in and zooms out. Okay, just on your mouse, the scroll wheel, and then typically you'll just set this back to fit. Typically do anyway. How do we play it? Spacebar, right? So there's a lot of things you'll see that will carry over from other stuff that we already know, right? Just taking a second to think about some of it, it's like, okay, I get it. How do we like our animation? Nice, oh my God. It's boring. It doesn't move. It's just so slow. How do we speed it up? How does it know where to start and where to end? Our keyframe. So how do we make it go faster? Move the keyframe where? Right. So the closer the keyframes are together, the faster it's going to move. So let's do that. I'm just going to grab my right keyframe and just drag it wherever. And then hit play. How many here have ever animated in After Effects before? Okay, a couple. If you've never animated before, you don't know how long things should take. So you have to experiment all the time, okay? Literally, if you look at something and you're like, I don't know if this looks good, walk away from your computer and come back. Change the value drastically so you can get a good comparison. Just for comparison, where did you put your keyframe at? Look at the bar above it. What does it say about where your keyframe is? 3. Is anyone at 4? Anyone at 2, 1? Okay. Depending on what you're trying to show, what you're trying to convey, will tell a lot about where those keyframes should be. If I'm trying to show off that this is a powerful, fast-moving box that hits the wall, those keyframes got to be pretty close. If I'm trying to show that it's pretty slow, think of like I'm animating a snail and I want to show how slow that is versus I'm animating a rabbit and I want to show how fast it is, right? Two different things that I would animate them completely different, right? So all of those things will come into how I animate the keyframes, where I put the keyframes. Now, as I look at this, I'm like, cool, this feels pretty good. But just to see, because I want to see, I'm going to take it even further. I'm going to go to like 10 frames. It's a lot more impactful, right? If I have a logo and I'm trying to show like this is a powerful logo and I have it like slam into the screen, that's a good speed for it. If this is something more delicate and I want it to kind of swoop into the screen, it's going to move slower, right? That makes sense. So same thing. So let's change it a little bit. So I'm going to put it back to 20 where it was before. Put yours at about 20 frame. Notice how it says 20 frame, and then it says like 1, and then it says 10 frame, 20 frame 2, 10 frame, 20 frame 3. Obviously, those are 1 second and 20 frames, or 2 seconds and 20 frames. So mine is right at the first 20 frame right here, or pretty close to it. If I look at my time indicator, it says 21 is about where that frame is at. Cool? All right. So right now it's going at the same exact speed. It's starting and moving at the same exact speed the entire time. It's hard to see on my screen. Maybe I can adjust that. Well, you guys can see it anyway on yours. Okay, so you can see the dots right here in the screen, each one of those dots. Each one of those dots is a frame. So it's showing you, here's where it's going to be at each one of these frame locations. And that way you can kind of line things up. In case there's maybe a spot where it like jumps for some reason, you can see that pretty clearly. There's also handlebars. Don't touch your handlebars, but I just wanted to show you that I could take those 2 keyframes and I could have it move like this and move like that, and then now it'll go like that. Okay, I don't want to do that for this instance. All right, so right now all those dots are evenly spaced. I want to have this basically start off slow and really slam into that side of the screen. So I want to change how the speed of it is going to happen along that way. You don't want to do this, but it would be possible to go frame by frame and put it exactly where I want it to happen. So if I wanted to go slow at the beginning, I could set some keyframes here and have it go slow, then have another one where it goes fast, and I don't have to blend those together. It's a lot of work. The least amount of work I can do, the happier I am. So what I want to do is I'm going to grab my 2 keyframes, so you can just marquee them, and you're going to, on your keyboard, you can hit F9 at the top, or you can right-click right on the keyframe and go to Keyframe Assistant. And I'm going to go to Easy Ease. Okay, now what happened was a subtle thing. You have to right-click right on the keyframes when you do that right-click. Keyframe Assistant and then Easy Ease. I can't click F9 because my recording software uses F9 to stop my recording lecture. So I have to use the right click. So what changed was, instead of the diamonds here, we now have these hourglasses, or whatever shape they are. Those are easing keyframes. And what that does, instead of it going the same speed the entire time, it basically like slowly goes into the movement, does the movement, and then slowly comes out of it, okay? It's not changing how long it's taking to get there. It still takes 20 frames, but the start and the ends of it are slowed down, which means what about the middle? It's super fast, or faster, right? So now if we hit play, we'll see a little bit subtler motion, right? It looks like it's slowing down right before it hits the wall. Does everyone have that? Yep, cool. So on every one of our keyframes that we do, unless it's for a specific reason, we would typically want to have ease in and ease out on that, okay? Or ease, easy ease is what they call it, because it does it for both sides. But we're going to go take this a step further. I want to take these 2 keyframes and I want to really enhance this effect. I want it to be like slow at the beginning and then fast at the end. So it's like kind of builds up speed, then boom, slams right into the wall at the end, okay? So I'm going to click on the word position, and I'm going to open up my graph editor. The graph editor is this button right here that says graph editor when you hover your mouse over it. The graph editor is typically a scary thing for people. There's a lot of stuff that typically goes on in here and how you visualize what we're seeing in a graph versus what's happening in our animation. It throws people. So we click the graph editor button right there. The default is this, which is this red and green curves. What do you think the red and the green mean? Christmas. No. X and Y. Which one is X and which one is Y? Yep, red is X, and then green is Y. Again, something that transfers across the board to other applications too. If you have a hard time remembering that, if you think of RGB, red, green, blue, right, just like your colors, X, Y, Z. Okay, we haven't gotten into Z yet, but Z is typically blue, green is typically Y, and red is typically X. Okay, we are not going to play with this one. This one is a bit confusing for beginners. So we are going to right-click somewhere in the graph and go to the speed graph. So it says in the middle, edit speed graph. And this is a little bit more easy to work with as far as what's actually happening on it. So this is basically the speed of it. So it starts off here, it builds up speed, that's as fast as it's going, and then it slows down. That's what we're seeing, right? So it slows down at the beginning, slows down at the end, and it's fast in the middle. So these work very similar to other areas where we can click on one of these points, we get handlebars, and then we can just drag the handlebar. So I'm going to drag the handlebar to the right and to the right. Okay, so click on the point, drag the handlebar to the right, click on the other point, drag the handlebar to the right. Now it does allow you to move it up and down, but don't move it up and down. Okay, so now we get that desired effect. It's slow right at the beginning and then slams right at the end, right? What kind of item do you think is slow at the beginning and then moves faster as it goes? A car could, but unless it's crashing into a wall, it wouldn't just stop like that, right? What about a ball bouncing? If I let go of a ball up here, where is it going to be fastest? The very bottom, right? Right before it hits the ground, that's the fastest it's going to go, and then it's going to go up. So same thing here. We're simulating what would happen in the real world with something like gravity. Something falls and does that. Now let's say we have a ball and it's going the other way, right? Let's say we threw it, it hit the ground, and now it's moving up. So where's it going to be fastest on the way up? The very bottom, right? So now it's the opposite. When you bounce a ball, the fastest it moves is right at the bottom. If it moved fastest at the top, that wouldn't make sense because it would just keep going, right? So the fastest is at the bottom, and then what happens as it goes up? It slows down. So how are we going to slow this down so that it's fast at the start and then slow at the end? What's that? No, not yet. Just how do I take this animation and just flip it so that it starts off fast and then moves slow? Opposite with the time editor. So instead of these bars going this way, just move the bars the other way. So just drag it to the left now. All right, so now we have that effect, right? So now it's going fast at the beginning and then slowing down. So if I had a logo, something's off screen, and I wanted to come into the screen and kind of slow down right at the end, that might be a cool way to do it, right? Slides in. The other way too, I could have it slam in, right? So there's two different ways to do exactly this. These things do not always have to be left and do not always have to be right. But typically, on every single thing you animate, you're going to come in here at some point and play with these type of things. Okay, so just so you can see, here's, if I really squeeze it right into the middle, right? So now I get a lot of the same thing where I get the slow at the beginning, slow at the end, but it's crazy fast right in the middle. Or maybe I pull both sides out. This way goes out, and that way goes out. That one's really boring. Okay, just like animation, just like when we have our two keyframes, we may not know exactly what's going to look good until we just start screwing around with it until we find what works, okay? And for every single thing you animate, you literally just have to play with things at the start of it to understand what things are doing. How many people in here play video games? Cool. How many people ever play video games? Anything? That's it. When you play video games, the first thing you do is grab the manual and go through, like, how do I play the video game, right? No. The first thing we do is download the updates, wait 7 hours, and then come back later and play it. No, you just get into it and you start playing around and you see what works and what doesn't. Oh, I can't kill the guy or shoot the thing or do whatever from this angle. Maybe I'll switch to a different angle. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll try that. Same thing here. Animation is no different. Just the attitude towards it is different because it's not as easy as playing a video game, right? Because it takes a lot more work to make something look cool. So same thing. Now to get, well, before we get out of this, just some pitfalls that people fall into is they typically will sometimes grab this and move it up or down. You don't need to do that, or you shouldn't do that, so don't do that. The other thing is sometimes you'll grab your handles and you'll put them on top of each other like that, and you can't get access to the handle you were trying to get. So you just move it aside and then grab it and move it over. Okay, so don't be like frazzled by it, just adapt to it. Cool. So I'm going to put this back to, where was it? Start that way. Okay. I'm going to click the graph editor off. And now I'm back to where my keyframes are. Now, even though I just tweaked my graph editor, that doesn't mean that I still can't play with the timing here, okay? That doesn't mean that I can't squish these closer together or put them farther apart, but it's just going to control how fast that goes or how drastic that effect is. If I dragged this keyframe way over here, you can see how diminished that effect is. We don't get the super fastness of it and then slowing down. It's a lot slower, and then it, you know, we can really see it like staggering right at the end. Same thing if I drug it faster, we really don't see that effect even happening here. At 10 frames, there's so much that happens within those 10 frames. It's not enough frames or not enough time for us to actually see the animation doing what it should be doing, okay? So again, just something you have to play with, moving your frames around and adjusting it. Now, let's say that I wanted to adjust when this happens. I don't want it to happen right at the start of this. I want this to happen at 2 seconds. I want the animation to start. How do I do that? Move what? Keyframes? Yep. So I can grab the keyframes and just drag both down to 2 seconds. So grab your keyframes and drag them down to 2 seconds. And then what happens? Yeah, 2 seconds it plays. It doesn't affect anything else. It just works at 2 seconds now. Now, we do want to pay attention to the fact that nothing is happening for the first 2 seconds. Okay? So on this layer, there's nothing, 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 and then that animation happens. After Effects is calculating every single layer in our stack. When we talked about memory usage and we talked about the computer and how it processes stuff inside After Effects, these are things that can speed things up. So if something is not on screen, we don't see it at all, there's no point in having the layer being right there. So what we should do is chop the layer at the very start of it, okay? So I'm going to hit undo to bring my layer back. Okay, so hit undo, put your keyframes back at the beginning. Now, instead of moving the keyframes, what else could we move? Yep. So this is just an item. That's just an asset. So if I drag this layer down to 2 seconds to start, that's when that whole layer starts. So I can just drag it, and now nothing is there, and then it starts to play. Okay. Now we have the other issue. Why am I watching 2 seconds of nothing before I get to see that? Right? Like, I want to see this animation over and over and over again because I'm trying to tweak it and make it look wonderful. This bar right here that goes straight across, this is your workspace. Basically, like, this is what I want to see. If we had a 10-minute animation and we're only working on 2 seconds of it, we shouldn't have to play through the entire 10 minutes to see that 2 seconds. So if we condense this bar only on the area that we want to see, then when we hit play, it'll only play that area. So I'm going to drag this bar here. And then now when I hit play, you'll see how it loops just in that area. On your hotkey sheet, you have an area that says timeline. What's the first two that it says? It's at the beginning and the end of your workspace. So instead of you dragging those bars, you could just hit B to set the beginning of that workspace and N to set the end of it. Okay, so I can go here, hit B, that sets the beginning of it. Go here, hit N, that sets the end of it. Okay. If you're working on a huge timeline, something this big, and you're zoomed in on that small area, you don't want to zoom out and then have to crunch it in there. You want to be able to just set your markers, okay? So typically I don't use this because that's kind of like cavemanish. I'll just go in there and hit N or whatever I need to. I also recommend as you play things, never play it just towards the animation. Like I wouldn't just play just the animation and then have it loop right away. I want to have time to process what I just saw. So you'll see my last keyframe is here, but I still have a little buffer that it plays just so I can let the animation sink in before it redoes its stuff. It's a minor thing, it's just a little thing. But having it exactly on there, it's hard to process exactly what's happening, right? It's just like, and then does it again, and does it again. Give yourself a little bit of room. Whoops. Oh, how I did that. Cool. All right, so now any one of these items here can be keyframed. Anchor point, scale, rotation, opacity. Anything with a stopwatch, you can put keyframes on. So let's add, let's say, a rotation to our animation. So when do we want to start rotating? Okay. So mine's pretty much right on screen right at the start of that. So I'm going to go right to my first keyframe. Wherever my first keyframe is, that's where it's going to start rotating. So I'm lining up my ticker with that first keyframe. And then how do I tell it that I want a keyframe rotation? Hit the stopwatch. Okay, and then where do I want my rotation to end? Or just right at it, okay? You'll be surprised at how if you line things up with other keyframes, everything works together a lot better. It makes sense, like, okay, when it gets on the screen, I want it to start rotating. But what happens is it comes on the screen and then starts rotating. I want it to actually like be already doing it. So it's all kind of part of the same motion. And then when it hits the wall, I want it to like rotate and hit the wall at the same time, because it's like compounding that same effect. Otherwise what happens is it rotates, the rotate stops, and then it hits the wall. It could be kind of like a weird thing. But we have the keyframes there. Afterwards, we can just move them around and see what looks good, right? So how far do we want this to rotate? 360 degrees. So what would I type and where would I type it? The second one we could type in 360, or in the left one we could type in 1, right? Because this is how many times around it goes. 360 is 1 time around. If I type in 360, it's going to automatically type in 1 there anyway. And then we'll hit play, and we'll see. How do we like it? You click, this is, I should have mentioned this before. When you double click on your layer, it brings up this window, okay, which is a, basically you're like looking at that solid or that item. And it confuses people because you hit play down here and nothing happens. So you just close that, and then you can get back to it. Oops. There we go. Okay, so why does this look so stupid? It is spinning at the end. But why is it doing it? It's not spinning too much. Our speeds are not lined up, right? So think of a ball rolling down a hill. The ball starts off slow and gradually picks up speed. What we've done is we've adjusted the speed of our position, but not the speed of our rotation. The speed should match each other. If the object is moving fast, it should spin fast. If it's moving slow, it should spin slow. So we need to do the same stuff we did to position on rotation, okay? So how do we take these rotations and make them go faster at the beginning and slower at the end? The graph editor. So go in your graph editor, and you'll see you won't be able to do anything. Why can't we do anything? Why don't we see the arch, which is what we should see? Ease in and ease out, right? So turn your graph off, grab your keyframes, hit F9, and then you can go back in the graph editor, and then everyone's happy. Okay, now you can click on position just to verify, like this is how my position curve is. Click on rotation, and the rotation and position curves should be very similar. They should both be going one way or the other way, or both in the middle, or however you have it set up, they should both be very the same. Nothing, right? So always be aware of that too. Even as when I first started animating stuff, I would do it all the time where, I'm just gonna make another random item so I don't screw this one up. Let's say I want to animate the position of this. I would go here to the beginning. I would say, okay, I want to animate this, and then I want this to move. So how many keyframes did I just set? 1, because I never updated my time to tell it when the next keyframe is coming in, okay? So it happens all the time. Just be aware of it. Looking down here in your timeline, you can see position. There's only 1 keyframe or 1 diamond. So I know, oh, I forgot to do something. So then I would move it back there, scoot my time up, and then move this back down. All right, so how does that animation look now? Right, it's much better. It's much more in sync with what should be happening, right? As it's the faster it moves, the faster it spins. The slower it moves, the slower it spins. Okay. We talked about what would happen if we just adjusted the speed, right? So let's say I brought this 1 frame over and 1 frame over there. It's not bad. It could work. It stops right at the end, or it stops rotating and then hits. What happens if I go here, right? Mm-hmm. And again, it's just a different effect. Let's say it does nothing. Right at the end. Right? Or what if I don't want it to rotate that much? How would I change how much it rotates? Change a number. How do I change a number? And then just change it, right? So you just go right back on top of that keyframe and just change how much it's going to rotate. Let's say just 90. It's a square, so it should work, right? Okay. Now in this case, we kind of lose a bit of the effect because it's not rotating as much, so we don't get a lot of that feel for how it rotates. So in this case, maybe, yeah, let's pull it back more. Right? Or maybe pull these all the way up. Like Tetris or something. Right? So there's lots of different things that you can do to it. I could even say, in this case, instead of starting at 0, I'm going to start at -45. Okay, not -45. I'm going to start at 45. There we go. I'll really squish that in. Yeah, it looks weird because we're going fast first and then slow. If we went the other way, then it would look a lot cooler. So I'm just going to switch mine around. Crap, I did it. This one first. That one. And then make sure I do the same thing here, right? Move these around. Right, so lots of different effects just by playing with values, playing with spacing of keyframes, playing with that graph editor. You can do a whole lot of stuff. But this part can't happen in the software until you have all that stuff planned out ahead of time, okay? Because it makes your life a lot easier. If I know that this box is going to come from here and go right there, then this is going to come from here and go right there, and this is going to come from here and go right there, half the work is done. It's just a matter of applying that information to the software, okay? And then tweaking all of this. This is what we should be doing in After Effects, is tweaking the animation to get the best out of it. We shouldn't be trying to design inside of After Effects while we're trying to animate, while we're trying to do all this other stuff, okay? So, save your project if you haven't saved it. I'm going to show a couple examples of different kinds of animation, or different animations. And this is one of my worst things that I do, is I will just literally save it anywhere if I'm just screwing around with stuff. And then I organize my folders, and I have to go find where I put my stuff. Example animation, that's what I want. Oopsie. Oops, that's different software. That's fine. Example, there we go. Okay. So this looks like a silly animation. But it's doing the same stuff, right? They're just moving, scaling, rotating, adjusting where it's at. All the speed graph stuff, everything is still there. You can see how complex your animation can get. The more movement, the more stuff, the more control you want to have over those items. Here's another one. That was loading, so it'll go slower the second time. Right? And you can see what properties I'm animating here. I animated position, I animated scale, and I animated rotation. Getting all of these to do like their own thing at their own time and syncing up all that stuff, that's the After Effects part, right? Here's a balloon. Again, in this case, it's loading it pretty quick, so you see it speed through. See a slow animation right at the beginning, right? You see it move and then stop, move and then stop, move and then stop. As it moves up, it goes pretty slow, and then it's fast right at the end. So all that stuff has to be in control of you as the animator. You have to understand when to move things, when not to move things, where to pause, where to go fast, where to go slow. Same thing here. Now this one has a little bit of bounce to it, so that as it rotates, it doesn't just like rotate and stop. It rotates and then kind of comes up and then bounces each time. And here's another one. Okay, now this is doing position and scale. So as it comes down, the position moves it down, and then the scale is what's making it look like it's squishing and squashing. And then whatever these are, Okay. Now these are all different ways that things can be animated. The very top one, if I look at the keyframes, they're diamond shaped, so they're linear. Okay. They have a constant speed from start to end. Well, the next one here is just easy eased. So it's just slow in and slow out. That's all that's happening. Okay. What's the next one doing? Let's use the solo button and watch just that one. Slow then fast, right? Okay. Let's see. The next one. Fast and slow, yep. I think it's the same one. Two of the same? Oh, no, sorry. The first one up here was fast right in the middle. We just don't see it very quick, that's all. So sometimes you'll see this. I've tweaked the graph. If you don't have enough frames to see that movement, you just don't have enough frames to see it. If I do 5 frames, I can do a whole lot of stuff in the graph editor and I'll see none of it because 5 frames is not a lot of time to show fast and slow. It's just not, okay? So in this case, there's not a whole lot of things happening in that one. And then what's the very bottom one doing? Let's turn that off in this. It just jumps, right? So this is called, what do they call it in here? Hold frame. Different softwares call it different things, but it's called a hold frame. Basically, it's holding this value until it gets there. So think about if you were to animate something that you just wanted to like pop onto the screen all of a sudden. You could do it just like that, just like, there it is. Typically, we don't do that, but sometimes you may want to have something like that happen. Cool. Also, music plays a huge role in how we animate stuff. When you don't have something linked, you'll see the icon like this. That means, hey, one of your links is missing. And this is where, if you save stuff in random spots, or you download stuff, and then you load it from your downloads, your desktop, or wherever else, then you clean it up, it just doesn't find that. So I have to go replace this file and find where I put that file. There it is. Hey. And that was there. Why aren't you playing back? You're playing back through headphones. Yes, that's right. Sometimes After Effects wants to play it back through something different. Oops. Oh. Yeah, I don't have my headphones on right now. There we go. There you go. There. So you can see how the audio blends and makes the animation feel a little bit more in tune. Now, this is obviously a song. I can't use that in my demo reel if I make money off of it. Typically, if you put it online, you're not going to get binged. However, just be aware, if you ever use a song in your demo reel, in your piece, and YouTube will actually go through and like analyze it, they could pull that song right out of your video and keep everything else as is. So if I were to make a whole animation based off of that song, and then I upload it, I could basically have the animation part, which is what we saw initially, this, without any of the music there. Or they would keep it as is with the song in there, and then any royalties would not go to me if I was making money off the stuff. It would go to Ed Sheeran, and he would get the money for it. So stuff to be aware of, okay? Even when I go on here, if I go into YouTube and I pull up YouTube and I show a video in class, YouTube flags that and says, hey, you showed this video. Now a portion of your royalties is going to go to the person's video that you just watched. I don't make money off my YouTube, but if people did, that's what would happen. So just be aware of that. There's a bunch of royalty-free music sites and stuff. and sound effects and whatever else. So I recommend, I use Google for all my stuff to find websites for specific things. If it's a specific sound effect I'm looking for, I'll do that. Let's say I'm looking for a splash sound effect. Splash sounds at Sound Bible. And here's free sounds at Sound Bible. And then here's that, okay? And any sound effects that I have, I may want to grab and then use inside my animation and might make it look cool. If I can't use Ed Sheeran's song, I may find different sound effects that I just have in my video that kind of match and just do a do kind of thing if I just found that kind of sound effect. Or just make it myself. Cool. All right, so we saved our project. Close After Effects out. In your P drive, yes. Okay, so what we should have is in your P drive, you have your folder. That folder is what you need to back up. So your hard drive, you should have your folder thrown onto it at some point. If you don't have a drive today, throw it up on Google Drive, throw it up on Vimeo, throw it or Dropbox, your email, whatever it is. Make sure you back up that folder. That way, when we come in next time and we start working on stuff, you have your stuff ready to go, okay? Any questions? Ma'am? I have a drive, but I don't know how to set it up. Okay, we can set it up too. If you have a drive and you want to use it for Mac and PC, we can go in the other room and set it up. If you just want to know how to do that, Mac utility. Oops. Format. I just need a picture of it. There we go. So essentially what you do is you open up Drive Utility on a Mac. Obviously make sure it's empty. You don't want any of the stuff that's on it. You click on your drive and you format it to exFAT. exFAT is the format that allows you to use it on Mac and PC and not be limited by file size, okay? So you go on the Mac, you open up Drive Utility, click on your drive, exFAT, and then you hit this erase button, and then it'll be good to go. If you want help with that, let me know. We'll go in the other room and we'll format it up. Cool?